The certifications and the investment. report. Oops, sorry.
Since they're all marked, we might as well just start with the budget.
Okay.
Good evening. So I'm working on our budget for the last several months. We begin in January, and it's about a little over 5-month process for us. I thought I would just kind of review with you the process and then go through the budget summary and talk a little bit about that, and then just highlight a couple items in the budget itself that were kind of process, well, I guess actually format changes for us. And then because it was discussed last year, budget process, we had a negative cash balance we've had growing for years in our fiber division. We changed our cost of service model for the fiber division, and that addressed kind of our operating deficit, but we still have this negative cash that's kind of a legacy of that. And so we wanted to bring that up again to see if the commission wanted to do a cash transfer to address that negative balance. That's an option. It's not anything required. It's just something that we wanted to bring forward again since it was part of the discussion from last year. So so as I go through this, I'm going to reference pages that are in the budget document itself. So as far as the process, like I mentioned, we start in January. Essentially what we do initially is we work on developing our divisional budgets. This is the third year we've had budgeting by department. And that's significant because what we do when we develop our department budgets, we start with, we do 3-year comparison, just like we have in our summary budget document. We have the most recent actual historical year, which in this case for this budget is 2021. And then we have the current budget year that we're in right now, 21-22, and we estimate that the last few months of this budget year. And then of course we have our budget for next year. And so in the past, as we converted to departmenting budgets by department, we had not historically recorded that in our general ledger. And so we had to go through and convert all the transaction detail to get it into that format so that we could get our actual results displayed by department. And this is the first time doing the budget. We didn't have to do that. It was already coded that way in the general ledger. So it was a significant efficiency for us in working through the budget. So that was good. And we go through on those. The first thing we do is we start with the budgets by department, get budget worksheets. All the department heads begin to work on that. They do estimates for current year and then budget for next year. We work through all of that. Also, finance works on payroll at the direction of the general manager, and HR and the input from the division directors. We go through all of that, put that together. All of that kind of encompasses our budgets by department, and you'll see that in the budget document. It's all those, a whole bunch of just line items. It's a lot of detail. It's actually really important to us though, in terms of operating, doing our operating budgeting, because we use that as our basis for comparing our actual results, which we do on a monthly basis. So it's significant for staff, and everybody's very involved in that. And so once those are done and we're, kind of have our initial review of that, then those roll up into the divisional budgets. And we also, the division directors work on, as well as Chad in IT and Thad, and I'm sorry, Chad in for facilities and fleet, and then Thad for IT. We develop all of capital budgets, those get incorporated. And then finally, we incorporate fiber and the budget summaries. And so what's in front of you this evening is a draft. We bring it as kind of our first view of the budget, get input from the commission, and ultimately then bring back a proposed budget in June. And this budget is, in terms of its format, it's all there. No sections are left out. We were able to get everything completed for review in its entirety. So, so that's kind of our process. And like I said, it takes us about 5 months to go through this. So it's pretty intensive, kind of an all hands on deck affair. So as far as the highlights, there's a narrative section and then a combined budget summary. And I thought I'd just kind of walk through the highlights and talk about those. And then maybe see if there's questions at that point. So, and the budget highlights, that's actually, I think, on page 3 of the document. So I want to hit that. So as far as the assumptions on revenues, so for electric, we didn't have any rate increases included in the budget, but of course we do have, because the change into the industrial customers with payment in lieu of tax, that's passed through. So we've incorporated that as far as the addition that we're going to remit to the city that we're going to collect from the industrial customers. That's a part of the electric revenues, but we don't have any additional revenues beyond that incorporated in the budget. We're right now, we are in the I guess the midpoint of our rates from BPA, rate case BP 2022, and so because we're in the midpoint of that, we don't have any rate change based on increased BPA rates. So as far as the water rates, the revenue for water, water does include actually 2 rate changes that occurred this fiscal year. In January of 2021, we had a 3% rate increase that actually had been delayed 6 months from the pandemic. And then we also had another rate increase, a 3% rate increase in October of 2021. So, and that is actually a correction in the narrative. I didn't give both of those increases, so I'll make that correction for the when we present next time. So that's 2021 or 21-22, so the budget year we're in now, and those have already occurred. We don't have any increases included in the budget for 2023. We've got a water cost of service underway right now, so that's being studied, and we'll have a rate design that will come from that study, and it will actually get presented at the next commission meeting. So but we don't include anything in the budget document. So as far as consumption changes, there is additional revenues from consumption, and part of that was just we had a hot year last year. We look at the Oregon Department of Agriculture. They publish a summer forecast for the farmers, and their published forecast is for another hot summer this year. So so we kind of doing effectively assuming similar consumption, summer consumption as we had last year. But we did have an increase last year, the year we're in right now, 21-22, from Carlton, and their use of water. That started in August. We projected that that'll continue into the next budget year through September of 2022. So, so they're working on coming online, and so we're thinking that they would be able to maybe get that done by the end of the summer and be on their water system and not taking water from Water and Light. So that's factored in to, see a bit of a reduction this year, 2023, 22, 23, compared to the current year we're in right now for Carlton. Also, the creamery will be coming back online, we understand, in July, and so that's factored in as well. So those are some additional assumptions around water revenues. As far as timber revenues, which are part of our water division, we've estimated for the year we're in right now, 21-22, that we would collect $4 million. And then in the following year, 22-23, for our budget year, about 2.5 million. So sales that were done in January were for 3.2 million, and we're anticipating that logging would start before the end of this fiscal year, before June 30th. And so we received some money from those sales this year, and so that's why we only budget $2.5 million next year. We're figuring we're going to get maybe 700,000 this current year. So, and of course, if we don't get that, pick it up next year. It's just kind of a timing thing, and that's how we've budgeted that. As far as expenses go, of course, the big driver of our expense budget is BPA power and transmission costs. They represented about 62% of our expense budget for all divisions. Like I mentioned, we're in the middle of our rate case, BP 22, so we don't have any rate changes in the budget. We do have a number of position changes, which are detailed in the departmental section of the budget. They're related to or driven by succession planning and changes related to retirements and other activities. So, and I'll mention just kind of a list of them here. So we've got a new E&O director position that will replace our water and electric director positions. We also have an electric general foreman position that gets replaced by an electric superintendent position. The lineman position will move to a serviceman position. FDP tech position moves to a substation or is replaced by a substation foreman position. We have a groundman position that will move in November of 2022 to an apprentice lineman position. And then a water superintendent position is replaced by a water assistant superintendent position. So a lot of transition. And then we also have a couple of new positions, an electric engineering manager and an apprentice meterman. Those positions are new. And we also had some vacancies in current year we're in right now, 21-22, that we were able to fill, but it took some time. There was significant vacancies in the current year. And so when you compare actual FTE and payroll costs to what we anticipate next year in our budget, that there was a step up related to vacancies as well. So, so overall, the all-in payroll change is about $1 million additional from all the changes. And so a lot of that, most of that was in the light division where these changes occurred. And so that's driving what you see in the light division budget, an operating loss that is projected to be 1.4 million. That's significant. And I don't think normally we would bring that forward as a, I don't think we typically have an operating loss that big, but we do have some operating revenue uncertainties that we don't really know what they're going to be yet, but they could be pretty significant. And so that's part of why we decided to leave this in the budget. And I'll describe them briefly. John may have some additional information on them, but the big one is BPA has a a reserve distribution clause that gets triggered if reserves hit a certain threshold. And that threshold, where that's at right now, might result in BPA distributing to their customers upwards of 200 million, and Water and Light's portion of that is just over 1%, it's 1.2%. So that that's a significant number. We could have a couple million that how that would come back to Water and Light would be in the form of reduced power costs. And so, and it would occur beginning in December and go through September of 2023. So, so that's a piece of it. And then there's also the possibility that if the strong secondary market sales for BPA continue, that maybe that would potentially lower costs in the next cycle, the BP24 rate case. So there's that possibility out there. There's also the rate design for the cost of service that was done last year for electric shows a 1.75% rate increase in October of this year. And that would, if that was implemented, that would generate in the neighborhood of $370,000. So that's out there. And then there's also some possibility that we could sell RECs that would add to that. So there's enough kind of uncertainty, and also the need for these positions that we have left this in the draft budget. So as far as pay and benefits, there actually was not any medical or life insurance increases. And we're in the middle of the PERS biennium, so we don't have any PERS increase for next year. We did program a high COLA into the budget, 8% for non-reps and 5.5% for union employees. And that's driven by the inflation that we're seeing, as well as the step increases and 3% merit increases for exempt employees. That's typical. And then capital items. There's several in the budget. I've just highlighted a few in the summary. The Polk Fuel Station and the Baker Creek Substation. Those are significant projects that we anticipate will be completed pretty early in 22-23, next budget year here, next several months. And then there's significant electrical line rebuilds and extensions, including a feeder reconductor that's in the budget. Also, we discussed this evening the Zone 2 water main upgrades and pump station. There's 3 American Recovery Plan Act grants that we received through the county that would allow for portable water purification trailers, 3 of those, as well as design work done for the finished water transmission main and raw water transmission main. So we received those funds just I think it was in April, and those will be spent next budget year. So, and then there's vehicles. The most significant is a new vacuum truck. So at 510,000. So that's just a few of the capital items. Yeah. So that's what's in the summary. Is there any questions around that or comments or?
Yeah.
Tom, to John, could we put some money in the budget to deal with the future planning as we talked about with the storage tanks and whatever water storage complex we might end up with out in the Redmond Hill Road or on the hills?
We can do that.
I mean, it's all, stuff related to zone 2 that we talked about for ages, it would let the board say, we're talking about $20 million and we can come back to you guys and say, okay, well, let's talk about SDCs. Let's talk about assessments per lot, things like that. I mean, give us a way to fund that so we aren't being the rich uncle providing all that. Second thing is our building is 25 years old.
34.
34. Whoa, where'd time go? Do we need to have anybody come in and do a facilities review for us?
That's actually in the budget.
It is, okay.
Yes.
And then anything needed at the physical components at the treatment plant, the roof or the walls or any of the storage tanks or at Fox Ridge, anything needed there physically?
I think the only thing we need at Fox Ridge was some roof repairs that we're gonna do here this summer.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay, that's just a couple of things I was thinking about.
no, that's good.
Jody, anything?
No, I don't have anything at this time.
And Tom, just a reminder, again, no electric cars for the commissioners.
Well, hydroelectrics are okay. Kathy?
No, I don't have anything right at the moment, except for, is it possible to get a paper copy
Yes,
of that?
Thank you for asking.
Um,
Yeah,
That would be
I'd
helpful.
be happy to do
It's
that.
so much.
It is. It is.
Very impressive, so much work done by everybody. If it starts at the department level and goes up, and 21 years, I never managed to push it down. So good job. Good job for you, because that's where it should start. But yeah, it looked great, but obviously I have a lot of learning to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Mark, three things. First of all, thanks for the explanation as to how this worked. I found that very interesting and very helpful, so thank you. The second one is, when you talked about the revenue from Carlton and such, and this is sort of a Mark Beauchamp question too, but in my mind, I've always thought of that revenue, Lafayette revenue, as money that ought to be squirreled away and used to finance the system that we're going to develop out of the Willamette. And that just gets put into the general fund. And then when Mark Beauchamp looks at it, it looks like we don't need higher rates or something. Is there a way that would be appropriate for the budget to account for that? And I know we'll have to talk to Mark, and I don't intend to change this budget, but if you could keep that in mind when you're talking to Mark Beauchamp, that I'd like to have sort of a sinking fund or something that we allocate that money for that, because it's just, that's a good use of that money. And then finally, you and I talked earlier, the question about the fiber division and that money, to make sure I understand, it's not necessary for any accounting reason or any reason to do that, basically debt forgiveness. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll hear from the rest of the commission about it. We ought to deal with that in the budget, though, whether we're going to do that or not, right?
Yeah, that if we did want to do it, then it would be, we need to account for it in the budget. to do
Okay,
it.
but if we didn't want to do it,
Yeah.
we don't have to, you would just make a note in the final budget that we're not, that we considered in not doing it.
Right.
I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission. My feeling is that we should not do that for a couple of reasons. And what we're talking about is the fiber division has this large negative cash balance as a debt to water and light, because we were using what I think they called the Massachusetts system, which was a percentage of all of our costs. And as I understand it, that system was basically best practice when we did it. And some people are still doing it, but staff found something that they thought at this point better reflects what the real costs are. So we didn't do anything wrong. We found something better for now. Also, as I recall, and I think you will too, Ed, we had a lot of staff time. We hired some consultants. So early on, the expenses that Water and Light paid to get this fiber system up and going were substantially more than they are to run it now. So So rather than try to go back and figure that out, I think it's better just to leave the way it is and move forward with the new cost accounting for it, but don't go back and then try to figure out exactly what we should transfer and what we shouldn't, because we shouldn't be forgiving money that maybe shouldn't be forgiven, and it'd be cost us a lot of time and effort to figure that out. And I think it is appropriate to keep it. So I want to hear from everybody else, but I would suggest that we ask Mark to, in the final budget, to say we considered doing this and decided that it wasn't appropriate. Anybody have any comments or questions? Ed?
I do, but I'll wait for Jody. Bites, Jody.
Thank you. So I was having a hard time tracking.
Ice cream, oh my God.
It's not ice cream. It's chickpea pizza. So you don't envy me at all. Commissioner Tankersley, I was having a hard time tracking exactly what you were asking of through the process. Could you just kind of walk me through it one more time?
Sure. We, for years, we allocated costs to the fiber division by what they called the Massachusetts model. And it was, I think, 1% of various things that the utility did. And I think it's something that utilities still do, and it's still acceptable. So what that resulted, though, is about a 400 and what's the number for?
So
Roughly $500,000 debt on paper from the fiber division to the water and light divisions. And the cash didn't change hands because they never had the cash to do it. It just kind of, this debt kept building up. So a few years ago, staff discovered there was another way that people were doing this, and the allocation of those costs results in a much lower allocation of costs. They sort of try to, at this point, they think they can figure out what how much line crew time we have, how much administration time, how much billing time, and so that number is like 20,000, 25,000 a year, I think now. So we have two choices. One choice is that we basically allow just leave things the way they are with that debt on the books, and over the next 20 years, the extra cash that's thrown off by the fiber division will pay that debt back to the water and the light division. And so then so we don't have to do anything. We don't have to go back and figure out what under this system, under the new system, what the charges would be. So we just do that. The other choice is to say, well, we're going to cancel the debt. We're going to basically say and give them a fresh start and the fiber division. And so that's the question. I think that canceling the debt raises other questions in the sense that because we're not supposed to make just willy-nilly transfers between the two systems. When the debt was created, it was a legitimate debt. It was best practices, I think, to use that system. So I think that to avoid the complication of going back and trying to figure out what's right, knowing what we know now in this new system, it's better just to leave it the way it is and move forward. And then the fiber division will continue to operate. It'll get whatever money it needs from the customers to do that. It'll actually more accurately affect its costs, I think, over time. So my suggestion is that we thank Mark for bringing that to our attention and ask him to put in the budget that we elected to just leave things the way they are without trying to go back and retroactively change the allocations. Is that clear, I hope? Sort of?
Yes, thank you. That's helpful. I do have one question, if I could.
Please.
So I understand that, and I know it's dark fiber. And is there any opportunity that Water and Light's looking at with the new money coming into the state for broadband and internet expansion? Is there something that Water and Light is positioning itself for that we need to be thinking about, or is this sort of status quo?
So.
Tom, this is when you tell them about entertainment TV. Go ahead.
Ed, this is a serious question.
So the answer is, we've been talking with, I guess, now Hunter Communications about, there is some potential areas that we would like to get fiber to. Treatment plant is one. The radio tower we have at High Heavens, another one where we have communication issues. So yes, there are things we're looking at, is how we can expand our system and trying to partner with somebody.
So how we deal with this debt, will that impact the ability for the organization to go after those or partner on those funds?
No,
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thomas, I have to ask you, have we had this discussion previously?
We discussed it.
Last year.
yeah.
To
it was
some
a year
degree.
ago.
The answer to the question, I think, is yes. So I guess, Mark, why did you bring this back to us again? Are the CPAs bugging you, and you have this, in your sense, we should be paying the money back, or what?
No, it just wasn't resolved from last year. We talked about it in June. And the direction was to look at it and bring something back. And we ultimately decided it would be best to do it as part of the budget discussion, since it involves the transfers of the other, potentially it would involve transfers from light and water to fiber. So it's really more than just the fiber division that we're talking about. So we brought it back as a part of the budget discussion this year.
Okay, so because we said, leave it alone,
Mhm.
or we're saying leave it alone, will you be bringing it back to us again next year?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, I mean, that in my mind is what we've said today is, as Tom made it kind of very simple, that we're going to sit here and sit tight and get it paid off eventually.
Right.
Right, Tom?
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, I think that's the answer to staff from us. I'm not trying to be flippant or ornery, but
No.
No, I think that's fair. That's what we're asking, is what
Yeah.
do you want to do with it?
Mhm.
And I think we have the answer now.
okay,
That's resolved.
okay.
Kathy, anything else about the budget that you would like to talk about here?
No, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Gonna
so
read.
so do we,
This is just a draft, so
Okay.
that's what we bring it.
We get to do this again.
Yeah, we'll bring it back in June with the tweaks that, Ed asked about for the zone 2 question, and then any other questions you might have between now and then,
So reach out directly to Mark.
either one of us,
Okay.
if you have questions.
and Jody, it sounds to me as if you have some more ideas about fiber. And if you did, John, who should you talk to? You? or-
Probably myself.
Yeah, I'm good. I just want to make sure that we're positioning the organization to be able to take any opportunity that presents itself, and that we're not hindering that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just thought you might have some more idea of what those opportunities might be.
Oh, I always have ideas.
Well,
I
John.
think she's worried about being appointed to a committee of one. That's why the hand went up immediately.
I have learned my lesson with this
Oh,
group.
Jody, just
Beat
call
the
Tom,
hand.
swear into secrecy so he doesn't tell me or the new mayor, and you can just give him some ideas. I
All right. Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay, so,
I have one other item
Yeah.
relative to the budget that I thought the staff would seek direction on, and that was around the payment in lieu of tax. So we put the calculation in the budget this year with a change going forward that we would not include the currently, we reduce the payment in lieu of tax by the amount that the city pays us for electric utility payments. We don't pay them 6% of the $1 million that they pay us annually. And so we are proposing to go forward that we would pay them on that money that they pay us. We pay them 6% of that. So that would be about a $60,000 annual increase to the payment in lieu of tax. And we would then also exclude the payments that we receive on conservation loans and customer help and customer payments that aren't part of our operating revenues. And the reason we're bringing this forward is we did talk with Mark Beauchamp last year about this as we were reviewing our payment load tax and the calculation. And if we were to make those changes, this would bring us in line with what is more typical. And so we felt like to have it in the budget document, described as to how we do it, and to make that change would be a good thing to kind of memorialize how we do our calculation. So
Any of the commissioners have thoughts on that?
No.
I think it just makes it transparent, right?
Mhm.
Because otherwise you're trying to figure out what are they doing behind the scenes to get the calculation right.
yeah,
Jody, anything? And so Mark, but it is, we are changing from a system that in effect, they didn't get, they just got a credit for what they owe us in the power. So that didn't give them, they didn't get money. They didn't get the pilot on that. So it's a $60,000 difference that will go to them.
right.
And they will, I assume we'll send them the check and they'll send us a check, right? We'll trade checks.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the consensus of the commission is, thanks for bringing it up, and go ahead and do it that way?
That's fine.
Great, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Let's get my iPad open up here again, and we'll see what the.
So anyway,
Are you the FEMA?
Didn't know if you wanted.
FEMA. Okay. Okay, FEMA, please.
Yep, I can do that one. So this memo, we're bringing to the commission kind of our current status of where we are with the ice storm, the damage sustained in the ice storm back in February of 2021. We opened a claim with FEMA in May of 2021, and there's a kind of a chart there that shows the 4 projects that were part of that, and what the total costs were, and then what we're seeking reimbursement from FEMA. In October of 2021, we entered an agreement with the Oregon Office of Emergency Management to be able to receive funds from FEMA, because that comes through the OEM. And so then in February of 2022, we completed our final review of our projects with FEMA. And so the next step now is that we would certify those projects with the OEM, with the Office of Emergency Management. And so in the packet is a resolution that would authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign those certifications. And we had an interesting thing come up right at the tail end of those certifications, getting those ready. Through controls, we discovered that the vendor, so tree trimmers, they actually corrected their invoice for the debris removal, and it was a $34 reduction. And when I went to the OEM, they said, we can't actually pay you less than what's been committed by FEMA. So, because it's a small project. So we just simply noted that in the certifications, just so it was fully transparent. And so that's what's for the commission this evening, is authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign those certifications.
Great. Here, what's the resolution, Sam?
So this is resolution number 2022-13, resolution authorizing approving completion and certification for infrastructure contract 4599 DR0 or OR between the Oregon State of Oregon, acting by and through the Oregon Military Department Office of Emergency Management, and the same City of Oakville Municipal Corporation of the State of Oregon, acting by and through the Planning Commission. That's 2022-13.
Do I have a motion to approve? Discuss the resolution first? No, hear a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Okay. Motion to approve by Commissioner Tate, Commissioner Gormley second. That's what I heard anyway. Okay, would you poll the commission, please, Amy?
Yes, Commissioner Tinkersley,
Just for the record, the mayor has been absent since the adjournment, so there are only 4 of us voting, but we're still a quorum. Yes.
Commissioner Gormley,
Yes.
Commissioner Christensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Tate,
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes 4-0. Okay, one more item, I think, on the new business, the investment committee appointment.
Yes. So 2 things. We wanted to just let the commission know about where we're at with our investment in the intermediate fund. As you're aware, the interest rates, the short-term rates, the Federal Reserve has been increasing those, and that impacts negatively the medium-term investments. And so that performance in that fund has not been good. We've had losses. And in the packet, in the financial section, there's the third quarter report, and it shows cumulative loss this year of a little over 300,000. And then in April, we received our statement and we lost another 87,000. So we initiated a redemption, essentially moving 2 million out of the intermediate fund, and our intention is to move that to the short-term fund. Short-term fund, the rates just went to 0.75%. And we were able to do that because we had, not too long ago, we had the purchase of the water rights. So that created some room in that short-term fund. And so we're gonna move some money over, but that's kind of the backdrop behind this interest in looking at investing in US Treasuries. And we've been talking about that for a few months. And at the March meeting, the commission established an investment committee and tasked that committee with looking over the information received from brokers. And so that information has been sent to the committee members. Just with scheduling conflicts, we haven't been able to meet. And with the mayor, this term ending here shortly, we wanted to find out if the commission wants to have another member of the commission take his place or not. And so that we can kind of finalize who we're going to meet with and work through the material.
Wouldn't it be appropriate to appoint a new mayor?
And I would prefer to ask Kathy whether she'd be willing to do it, given her potential.
Well, I'd step down, let Kathy and new mayor do it then. I'm teasing.
Jody doesn't look at me. She's trying to hide, basically.
Hey, Tom, and Kathy's retired now, you know that.
Oh,
And
June 30th.
and-
I'm so busy.
For 2 reasons. First of all, Kathy had an interest before. I think she'd be very confident in this thing. And second, I think the new mayor is going to have a lot on her plate, getting up to speed on other things. And I'd like to have somebody who can hit the ground running on this. So if Kathy's willing to do it,
I just wanted to make you kind of sweat just a slight bit, but obviously you're so firm that.
Yeah, I would be devastated if it didn't work out that I could participate. That would be horrible.
So
I am
the
not the
chairman,
best person, but I feel bad for Remy and the amount of things she has on her plate. So out of consideration for her.
so Kathy, you and I we're being stuck with the last 2 jobs, personnel and now money.
That's okay. We'll have some debt. Some people will owe us some stuff later.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna pay us.
We'll get the M&Ms out.
Okay.
So
Those were the days.
Sorry.
do we need a
Mark.
motion, Sam, or can we just have it?
Certainly, maybe just by consensus.
So by consensus, would the commission like to appoint Commissioner Tate as the second person on the investment committee?
Sounds good.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you. All right. We can put that little on her parking spot.
So now, Mark, good luck in getting us together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll work on it.
that's a challenge.
Well,
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
her compensation will be a personalized parking spot.
Wow.
Is that out on Marsh Lane?
Oh, I didn't say where.
Wow.
I was thinking our parking lot. I was a little bit. I was thinking, well,
Thank you for that. He's gonna put me out of.
John, you have come up with a great idea. Let's have the commissioners all have their own parking spaces on Marsh Lane. We mark it off with yellow and red paint.
Tollway zone. Anybody else?
See if people dare to violate the standard.
oh, I guarantee they will.
Yes.
It happens with the yellow now.
Moving right along. Do we have an executive session tonight?
Thad, are you ready for an executive session?
I am ready.
Okay, I guess, yes.
I will.
Before we get into executive session,
Wait,
Nice job, Amy.
I have to read it in before we go out. into executive
And wait,
session.
Ed wants to make another joke, I think.
no, I want to tell you that, last meeting I was sitting where Kathy's at and never had one issue with hearing, and in spite of my hearing aids, I think, especially when people turn slightly away from the table, the audio device is not picking up all the sound. So I think Tad's got the ability to probably crank it.
And I think we can move them a little farther on the
Okay.
table. That might be part of the problem too.
Okay. Because some of what Mark said, I couldn't hear at times, and Kathy questioned Shad. So, okay, thank you. That's it.
Notice he didn't care that he couldn't hear me. Okay.
Your
so,
voice was muffled.
yeah. Sam, if you'll get us ready for executive session, please.
All right, so the commission is going to be entering into executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 sub 2 sub F to consider information and records that are exempt from public disclosure under ORS 192-355 sub 23 relating to identifying security measures, individual building and information processes. The commission will be returning to open session to take any actions. If there are any members of the press present, which I don't think there are, but if they were, they're just cautioned to not making disclosures related to the subject matter of the executive session. I think with that, we're ready to go into executive session.
Yeah, I will call us